The night was unnervingly quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you feel it inside your skull. I had been driving for hours on a stretch of highway that seemed to have no beginning or end, the black asphalt disappearing into the fog ahead. Streetlights appeared every half mile, flickering weakly, their dim yellow glow painting brief glimpses of the road and the overgrown shoulders. I had taken this route countless times before, but tonight something felt off. Even the hum of my tires against the road seemed too loud, echoing like it wanted to warn me. The GPS insisted I keep going, yet I could swear I had passed the same mile marker 3 times. Somewhere in the distance, the faint outline of a gas station appeared, a lonely beacon in the dark, but the closer I got, the stranger it looked. Its sign flickered violently, the letters warped as if the electricity itself were alive. Rest Stop 47 it read, though the neon was barely holding on, buzzing in angry staccato bursts. I slowed the car instinctively. Something about the station felt wrong. Not the usual isolation, but a presence, subtle, watching. The air was heavier here, damp and cold, carrying the faint smell of decay. My headlights caught broken benches, shattered windows, and a vending machine with its lights flashing in a pattern that almost seemed like a warning. Parking felt unnatural, too deliberate, as if the rest stop wanted me to stay. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath my boots sounding louder than I expected, like a chorus of whispered warnings. No one was around, yet I had the distinct sensation that eyes were on me, from the shadows beneath the awning, or perhaps from the trees that lined the highway. I walked toward the entrance. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and a bell rang, too loud, too sharp, cutting through the quiet. The smell hit me first. Stale coffee mixed with something metallic, almost iron-like. The interior was dim, lit only by a dying fluorescent bulb that flickered sporadically. Tables were scattered haphazardly, as if abandoned mid-use. Chairs knocked over, a half-empty cup of coffee cold on the counter. And then I saw it, a newspaper, yellowed with age, lying on the counter. The headline was jarring. Another traveler disappears on Highway 47. The date was decades old, but something about it made my stomach tighten. Scribbled beneath in red ink were the words, "They are watching, never stay." I froze. A soft whisper seemed to drift through the air, almost imperceptible. I turned quickly, but no one was there. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, shifting unnaturally, like it had a mind of its own. That's when I realized, this rest stop wasn't just abandoned. It was alive, watching, waiting, and I had just become part of its story. The moment I stepped fully inside, the air seemed to thicken, pressing against my chest. My eyes scanned the room, but the corners felt impossibly dark, shadows stretching in ways that defied reason. I tried to shake the feeling. It was just an abandoned place, I told myself. But the instinct to leave vanished the instant I caught sight of a mirror along the far wall. It reflected more than just my own image. A figure stood behind me, shrouded in darkness, features indiscernible, as if the fog itself had formed into human shape. I spun around. Nothing. The mirror now showed only me, breathing a little too quickly, heart hammering in my ears. I moved cautiously to the diner section, where cracked tiles and overturned stools painted a scene of long-forgotten chaos. The air smelled sharper here, an iron tang that made my throat tighten. On the counter, a soda machine flickered erratically, lights pulsing like a heartbeat. It made no sense, but I could swear the pattern was deliberate, almost communicative, like a code I wasn't meant to decipher. The windows were opaque with grime, but faint shadows flitted just beyond them. Movement. I held my breath. The faint scraping of metal echoed from the kitchen, though the place had been abandoned for decades. My logical mind insisted it was rats, or perhaps the wind. My gut screamed otherwise. A door at the far end of the room caught my attention. It was a storage area, unmarked, the kind of door that invited curiosity even when your instincts screamed to stay away. The handle was cold, unnaturally so, and as I touched it, a chill ran up my arm, a whisper brushing against my ear, "Leave." I hesitated, but curiosity overpowered fear. I opened the door. The room beyond was small, bare, except for a bulletin board cluttered with faded photographs and torn notes. Faces stared out at me, smiling families, travelers with friendly eyes, all now long gone. A single message was scrawled in what looked like dried blood. "They never leave. You will join them." My breathing quickened, but I felt compelled to look closer. The papers were dated back decades, each marking someone's last visit, a timeline of disappearances. The realization hit me hard. This rest stop was more than haunted. It was a trap, a snare for those foolish enough to stop. I turned to leave, but the exit door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. The lights flickered violently, and the shadows seemed to move faster now, converging. I could feel them, the watching eyes that weren't there, the unseen presence that measured every step. Panic clawed at my chest, but I forced myself to remain calm. I had to understand. I had to see the truth behind this place. And in that moment, the rest stop whispered again, closer this time, almost tangible. Stay, or leave, but you will be marked. I knew I shouldn't have stayed. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave, to get back in the car and drive until the rest stop vanished behind me. But something rooted me to the place, a curiosity I couldn't shake. I needed answers. I moved cautiously through the diner, past the overturned chairs and broken tables toward a narrow hallway I hadn't noticed before. The walls were scrawled with strange symbols, some scratched into the paint, others drawn hastily in black ink. I could feel a pulse in the air, subtle but undeniable, as if the rest stop itself were alive, reacting to my presence. At the end of the hallway was a door marked "Employees Only." I hesitated, the whispered warnings echoing in my mind, but I pushed it open. Inside was a small office, the kind that would have once held a manager's desk and filing cabinets. Now it was a tomb of memories, old logbooks, dusty ledgers, and boxes stacked haphazardly against the walls. I rifled through the papers. And then I found them, reports of missing travelers, some never seen again, others found days later, wandering aimlessly, incoherent, terrified. Each report ended with the same chilling note: visited rest stop 47. A photo fell from one of the ledgers. It was of a family, smiling for the camera at the very diner I now stood in. But there was something wrong. Shadows behind them seemed to curl unnaturally, almost like tendrils, reaching toward the family. My stomach churned. I heard a faint sound then, a low hum, like a song just at the edge of hearing. I spun around. The room was empty. The air felt thick, as though someone had walked right past me, leaving a cold trail. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, pressing in from every direction. I left the office and wandered into the restroom. Broken mirrors reflected fragments of the space, and in one cracked pane, I saw something I couldn't explain. Not a reflection of myself, but dozens of eyes, small, dark, unblinking, staring at me from the walls. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and they were gone. The sound of dripping water echoed in the room, irregular, almost like a heartbeat. By now the rest stop had changed. It wasn't just an abandoned building, it was a living labyrinth. Doors that had been closed now creaked open, leading to rooms I was sure hadn't existed moments before. Hallways twisted unnaturally, the layout bending in ways that made no sense. I realized then that this place was not meant to be mapped. It was meant to trap. I stumbled upon another bulletin board, this one covered in photographs, notes, and newspaper clippings. Travelers who had stopped here before me, faces I recognized from missing persons reports, looked back at me. Some were smiling, some terrified, all gone now. A single note in jagged handwriting caught my eye: the rest stop chooses who leaves. Choose poorly, and you will remain. Panic gripped me, but with it came a strange resolve. I had to find a way out, or at least understand what I was dealing with. Because whatever had claimed this place, whatever lurked behind its flickering lights and shifting walls, it wasn't finished with me yet. By now, the rest stop had stopped feeling like a building, and started feeling like a predator. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, bouncing off walls that seemed to stretch farther than they should. Shadows moved without cause, pooling in corners, and then vanishing as I approached. The lights flickered violently, casting fleeting images of figures that weren't there a moment before. I tried to leave, retracing my steps to the front door, but the hallway had shifted. What had been a straight path now twisted, turning back on itself. I could hear faint whispers, just at the edge of comprehension. Voices speaking words I couldn't understand but felt were meant for me alone. You shouldn't be here. You're next. I caught sight of movement in the diner. Tables seemed to shift slightly, chairs rocking on their own. I blinked, and the room appeared normal again. Then a shadow fell across the far wall, tall, thin, and impossibly still. My pulse raced. I could feel it watching, anticipating. I entered the restroom again, desperate for some sense of control, some reflection of reality. But the mirrors were gone. In their place were warped surfaces, like oil on water, reflecting a distorted version of myself. My face stretched unnaturally, eyes too large, mouth too wide. And behind me, fleetingly, I thought I saw a figure standing, tall, dark, unblinking, then nothing. The air grew colder. My breath was visible, puffing out in clouds as if the rest stop exhaled around me. I could hear footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate, matching my pace even as I sped up. Doors slammed shut in the distance, yet no one was there. The walls whispered, the floor groaned, and somewhere above, a low hum grew into a sound that pressed directly against my skull. I ran down a corridor that I didn't recognize, my footsteps echoing into infinity. Every door I tried opened into the same room, a dimly lit diner, identical to the one I had left. Each time the lights flickered, and I saw faces in the shadows, faces of past victims, twisted and pale, their mouths moving silently in some plea I couldn't hear. A vending machine buzzed violently as I passed it, throwing cans onto the floor with a metallic clatter. Then the whispers became clear. I could understand them now, and they chilled me to the bone. You can't leave. Not tonight. Not ever. I backed into the main room, heart hammering. The neon sign outside flickered erratically, casting red and blue hues into the fog. Outside, the world beyond the rest stop seemed unreal, stretched and warped. I could see highways that shouldn't intersect, roads looping in impossible geometries. The rest stop wasn't just a building. It was a place outside reality, feeding on fear, bending perception, and testing the minds of those foolish enough to enter. And then I saw it, a shadow that didn't belong to anything physical, taller than a man, stretching impossibly into the ceiling. Its presence pressed against me, and I realized it wasn't just watching, it was waiting. Patient, eternal, hungry. The fog outside had grown so thick it pressed against the glass, swallowing the world beyond. I couldn't see the road anymore. Only the reflection of my own face in the window, pale and trembling, and something faint behind me, moving. I turned sharply. Nothing. Just the same diner, frozen in that endless moment between flickers of light, but the hum in the air was louder now, vibrating deep in my chest. It wasn't sound anymore, it was a pulse, alive, synchronizing with my heartbeat. I stumbled toward the door, gripping the handle. It was ice cold. I pulled. Nothing. The door didn't budge. I yanked harder, until the metal tore at my skin, but it stayed shut. Then, faintly, from the other side, I heard it. A voice. Calm, distant, almost familiar. Don't leave yet. You haven't paid. I froze. My mind spun through the memories. There had been no attendant, no one here. I turned. Behind the counter, where there had been nothing moments before, a figure stood now. Its back was to me, head slightly tilted. The uniform looked decades old, torn and blackened with age. When it finally turned, the face was wrong, like a bad memory of humanity. Eyes too deep, mouth stretching too wide into something that wasn't a smile. You're part of it now, it said, voice layered with others, dozens of them, all speaking in unison. You stopped here. You belong here. The lights went out. Darkness, total, crushing. For a heartbeat I could hear nothing but my own breathing, and then the sound of countless footsteps, not approaching, not retreating, but circling. My flashlight flickered to life, its beam cutting through the void. There were people, dozens of them, standing in silence. Their faces were gray, hollow, eyes vacant. Some were familiar from the photographs on the bulletin board. They stood perfectly still, heads tilted slightly as if listening. They never left, I whispered, realization hitting like ice water. And then the room changed again. The fog seeped through the walls, thick and suffocating. The walls pulsed, the floor rippled like liquid, and every exit vanished. The neon light from outside bled through the windows, red and violent, painting the figures in streaks of blood. The shadows began to move, crawling up the walls like living veins. I ran. I don't even remember how long. Hallways, doors, rooms folding in on themselves. The whispers followed, growing louder. Stay. Join us. Feed the road. When I burst through a doorway, I expected to find the parking lot, my car. Anything. Instead, I was standing right back where I had started, in the diner, in front of the counter, the newspaper still lying there. The same cold coffee cup, the same hum of lights. It was as if time had looped. I backed away slowly, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't even realize my phone was in my hand until I saw the screen. It was 3:07 a.m. I had checked the time before entering. It had been 3:07 a.m., then too. No time had passed. I stumbled to the window, pressed my face against the glass. Outside, the highway stretched endlessly into the mist. Then, from the fog, 2 headlights appeared. Another car pulling in. I could barely make out the driver's face, illuminated by their dashboard lights. They looked tired, unaware, just another traveler seeking rest. My hand hit the glass, but no sound came out. I tried to shout, to warn them, but my voice was gone. They parked, the door opened, the bell above the entrance chimed softly. And then, for the first time, I saw what was behind the fogged reflection in the window. My own face, still sitting in the booth, motionless, eyes hollow and gray. I realized then, no one ever leaves the last rest stop before hell. They just take turns welcoming the next.